oftentimes as perfectionist pattern perpetuators, we set the standard so high that it's often unattainable. And so we're always falling short in some way. And we're often always falling within our comfort zone because we're setting that bar so high and so unattainable. Hey yo, what's up? My name is Nat and I am your mindset coach here to support you in shifting your internal world so that you're showing up that much more powerfully in your external world. Welcome to another mindset teaching. Sometimes when I get really excited, I sloof my words together and they get jumbled up, but you guys still know what I'm saying, right? Welcome to another mindset teaching. Today we're talking about perfectionism, big hot topic, super common for business owners, super common limiting pattern that really gets in the way of our performance. And we consciously know that, but subconsciously there's still a part of us that's holding onto that pattern, holding onto that perfectionism, like our life depends on it. So before we dive into that teaching, I just want to do a quick little review. Last week we talked about 5 ways to really up-level relationships in your business and outside of your business. I mentioned last week how it's not usually the most difficult part about building a business. Is challenging to do the marketing, the content creation, the fulfillment, all of the team building, all of that. That's challenging. But oftentimes what's even more challenging is managing our relationships outside of our business. Because a lot of people don't necessarily understand what we're creating and cultivating in our business. So the relationships outside of that with family and friends, we're often butting heads. They don't understand what we're doing. They don't understand our life path. And so conflict arises and our family and friends often aren't as supportive as we need them to, but we can set them up to be supportive. We can have compassionate conversations to get them on board and to get them supported. And we can also really start setting boundaries in a healthy, honest, loving way, which I also talk about in that teaching. So I'll go ahead, I'll tag it up here for you guys to watch it. Cannot recommend it enough. So many people have already found value in it. I've taught it multiple times to multiple 6-figure masterminds over the past 6 years. So it really is such a wonderful teaching that I think anyone can really benefit from and take at least 1 out of the 5 things to take and implement into your relationship. So I'm so excited to hear how that goes for you. But let's go ahead, let's dive into perfectionism. So perfectionism, at the end of the day, it's a pattern. I've mentioned this before in other videos, but it's not that we are perfectionists or that we are procrastinators or that we are imposters. It's that we have a pattern of perfectionist tendencies. We have a pattern of procrastinating. We have a pattern of feeling like an imposter. Today we're talking about just perfectionism, but it really is just a pattern. It's a tool that you've utilized probably for quite some time, not just in your business, but in your life, multiple aspects of your life, because everything is connected when it comes to mindset. Even though we're talking about business mindset, everything in our relationships outside of our business is really connected into our mindset and the things that we're working on mentally in our business. So chances are this perfectionist pattern has been something that's been with you for a really long time, and it's really just a tool. It's a tool that you've been utilizing because a part of your subconscious mind thinks it's useful. A part of your subconscious mind thinks that, oh, this perfectionist pattern, hey, it's going to get us XYZ. Hey, it's going to get us this amount of success, or hey, it's going to keep us safe in this way. So really the biggest thing is to recognize, first step in really shifting this perfectionist pattern is recognizing, number 1, it's a pattern. And it's a tool that you've been utilizing to help you subconsciously, even though consciously it can get in the way. And then also recognizing that it really is a protection pattern. It's a protection pattern. It's a pattern that you've gotten comfortable with utilizing. And it's also a pattern that keeps you in your comfort zone. When we set our standards so high, oftentimes as perfectionist pattern perpetuators, we set the standard so high that it's often unattainable. And so we're always falling short in some way. And we're often always falling within our comfort zone because we're setting that bar so high and so unattainable. We're landing in our comfort zone. Consciously, that pisses you off like no other. Consciously, you're like, I want to achieve more. I want to be more successful. I want to make more money. I want to help more people. I want to grow my business. But my perfectionist pattern is the thing that is standing in the way of that. But to part of your subconscious mind, that perfectionist standard is actually ensuring that you are landing somewhere below that standard, which is always going to be in your comfort zone. Super common protective mechanism. So the more and more we perpetuate this perfectionist standard and pattern in our business, the more and more we continue to stay in our comfort zone, which to a part of our subconscious mind, that's very comfortable simply because it's familiar. Not because it feels good, not because we intentionally choose it, not because we actually want it, simply because it's familiar. And I know that can be really frustrating, but the wonderful thing about mindset work, which I mentioned so many different times, is that our brains have plasticity. We have cognitive capabilities. We can always change our mind. So even though you've been utilizing a perfectionist pattern subconsciously for decades probably, we can still start teaching our brain to form new neural connections that are reinforcing a new pattern, that are reinforcing a new way of thinking, a new way of being, a new way of feeling, and a new way of acting. And of course, that takes a little bit of time, but really it takes repetition. That's the most important part, is really working it and reinforcing it over and over and over again, the new experience that we want to have. And it's a new way of thinking, a new way of showing up is created so much more quickly when we're intentionally, consciously choosing to reinforce a new mental habit, that eventually that super subconscious way of operating and thinking when it comes to perfectionism, the neural connections that are reinforcing that with time are going to get weaker and weaker. They're going to fire less and less often. And you get to acquire some really great tools to get better and better at noticing when that part of your brain is trying to kick you back into those perfectionist tendencies. You can say, oh, I know what's happening here. And you get to consciously choose to reinforce a new way of thinking and take action from that place. And the more we reinforce that, the less that old pattern is going to dictate our lives. The less that old pattern is going to dictate the way that we show up in our business. So first step in shifting perfectionism in your business is going to be just acknowledgement that it's a pattern, that it's a tool, and that it's also a protective mechanism. The next step in shifting perfectionism in your business is to ask yourself, where did I learn this tendency from? How has it served me in the past? This might take, one of my clients asked, how do you start answering that question? How do you start figuring it out? And I will say it's through my meditation that I've been able to kind of just take a step back and really start thinking about, okay, when did I first start perpetuating this perfectionist pattern? I also asked my mom, I was like, hey, I've noticed this pattern in my life. Like, was I always like this as a kid? Or maybe there was a defining moment in my upbringing where this happened. Sometimes it might take just a little bit of time. I like to, whenever I'm trying to uncover something new or some insight about myself, I often just set the intention of I'm open to something coming to mind. I don't have to know the answer right now in this moment. I can let it simmer. And oftentimes in a few days, simply by just having that additional level of awareness, we're just kind of putting a little bit of a bookmark in our brain of like, hey, keep an eye out for stuff that is in relation to this. Our brain will sort through it. Have you guys ever seen the movie Inside Out? Love the movie Inside Out. It's one of my top favorite Disney movies ever. Top favorite is Coco. Second favorite is Inside Out. And what I love about the movie Inside Out is it really gives us such a fun and really graspable perspective of what's happening in our minds. And it gives us a really good example of how we are not just one part. We are multiple parts. There are multiple parts of us that are inside of our minds, inside of our consciousness. And our brain is just so complex, and there's so much depth, and there's so many memories that have been stored way, way, way back. And the movie Inside Out does such a great job of illustrating that. And so I often imagine myself, that's homework number one for you guys. If you are really diving into this mindset stuff, watch the movie Inside Out and really see that as kind of a visual perspective. If you are a visual learner like me, It'll really help you to kind of grasp some of the things that are happening in our brain. But whenever I'm trying to think of something from my past, I'm imagining that I'm sending a little orb of intention from like my main control center. I'm sending it to the back of my subconscious mind. It might take some time for that little orb messenger to come back to me, but it usually does. I just have to send it out first, send that intention. Watch the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. But anyway, step number 2 is ask yourself, where did this perfectionist pattern come from? When did it start in my life? I'll use myself as an example. Growing up, I grew up in a house of immigrants. My parents moved to the US in the 1980s. And so I am a first generation Romanian American. And I grew up in a household where we didn't speak English as our first language. Our first language was Romanian. And my parents were quite traditional immigrant parents where they really emphasized good grades. And my parents really celebrated us when we got really good grades. And my parents also really celebrated us when we got not just A's, but A pluses and A plus plus. And if there was a bonus on a test, they would really celebrate you extra if you got 103% instead of 100%. A minus, my parents would be like, okay, good job, but I know you can do better, which in truth, they were right. I could always do better. And my parents didn't teach me this for any type of harmful intent. They really did what was best. And honestly, it served me immensely. I loved school. I loved being challenged. I loved aiming for the top. It really motivated me on a wonderful level. But that perfectionist tendency was something that served me really well in the traditional school system. But then once I started my own business, that perfectionist tendency was not serving me in the same way. So I had to first understand that, this pattern is not something I have to be resentful for. This is a pattern that I get to actually notice how it was created at some point of my life as a tool. And because it was created, it had served me immensely for lots of different parts of my life. And I get to be grateful for that. But then step number 3 in this process is recognizing that I'm ready to release that pattern and I'm ready to use a different pattern to still yield the same results. And again, it really is just a tool. Perfectionism is a tool that has served you a part of your life, and maybe aiming for that in some way really motivated you in certain aspects of your life to a certain degree, but then maybe you entered new stages of your life where that same form of motivation, those same patterns and tendencies and utilization of the perfectionist tool, that didn't serve you as much anymore. And that's okay, because ultimately your brain's goal is to aim for your definition of success, is to aim for, I want to be here in my life, in my relationship, in my health, and in my business. And we still want the same things that we wanted when we were really utilizing the perfectionist pattern, but that pattern and that tool isn't working anymore. So we get to choose a new one. And that's where our brain's plasticity comes back into play, of us choosing to change our mind, of us choosing to implement some new mental habits that we want to reinforce to support us in pursuing our goals and hitting those goals on a much more consistent basis with tools that really work, not the perfectionist tool. So step number 3 is just really recognizing that I release this pattern from my life. I see it as a tool that worked, or that I thought was going to work. Maybe it really didn't work, but it got me halfway there. So that is a level of success that I can be grateful for and celebrate. I can forgive myself for holding on to something that I knew wasn't working for a really long time. And I forgive myself for that, but ultimately I release and I choose something else. And from this place of acknowledgement and from a place of gratitude, this is so important that when we choose to shift our minds, change our minds, heal our minds, when we heal not from a place of resentment, from a place of anger, from a place of just intense, icky emotion, when instead we choose to shift our minds from a place of gratitude, from a place of intention, from a place of forgiveness, it's so much easier to shift into that. It's so much easier to choose a new thing to focus on. It's so much easier to pour into new ways of thinking and new patterns to utilize. So step number 3 is forgiving and releasing and recognizing that there's an opportunity to use a new tool. So step number 4 is asking yourself, what's a new way that what's a new tool that I can utilize in my business that's not the perfectionist tool, that is going to be more supportive of me on my journey? And for me, I'll give you an example of what it sounds like. a new perspective, a new tool that is going to be more supportive of me and my business in this stage of my life is declaring that it's actually my imperfections that are going to make me most successful. That it's not being perfect that's going to get me to where I want to be. It's actually being imperfect that's going to get me to where I want to be. Being imperfect is going to allow me to take consistent action, and that's actually more important than being perfect and always postponing things for them to be perfect, for them to be over 103%. It's my imperfections that make me most successful. It's through my imperfections more people relate to me and connect with me and thus decide to work with me. I'm actually my most successful when I'm fully authentically self-expressed and I'm imperfectly perfect. I'm me. I'm most safe when I'm fully and authentically self-expressed, when I am perfectly imperfect, when I am me. So that right there is a new foundational belief that you get to identify. Take mine and use it, or switch yours up, change it and add your own kind of new spin to it. But really notice how this is just an opportunity for you to choose a new pattern, to choose a new way of thinking, to choose a new way of perceiving what's necessary for success. And not only are we shifting our perfectionist tendencies, but we're also shifting our belief in what it takes to be successful. Those go hand in hand. So it's really important to recognize that perfectionism has been a tool that you've utilized for quite some time, and alongside using that perfectionist tool has been a perception of success as well. That's why you've been using the perfectionist tool, because of what you thought was necessary for success. And now you get to recognize that, oh, actually, let me tweak what's necessary for success. Let me have a different tool that I'm utilizing. Maybe it's an imperfectionist pattern. That could be an example that we've talked about today. And let me see that as the thing that's going to fuel my definition of success and what I believe is necessary in order to hit my goals. So that's number 4. Ask yourself, what's a new way of showing up in my business, a new tool that I could utilize that's more helpful than perfectionism? And then step number 5 is going to be reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. Reinforce this new perspective at least 2 to 3 times a day. I was like, where's my phone? My phone's right here. On my phone, I have reminders that pop up with my new foundational beliefs that I'm always thinking of, that I'm always reminding myself of as they pop up throughout the day. I've also have them written on different sticky notes all over my apartment. I have them on my desktop as well. And so really reinforce this new perspective, this new way of thinking. Whenever you find yourself perpetuating the perfectionist pattern, which is totally going to happen, again, we're not perfect. It's still going to happen. But every time it happens, every time you find yourself leaning towards those perfectionist tendencies, it really is just an opportunity for you to reinforce something new and for you to consciously choose to use a different tool that's going to be much more supportive of the success that you're aiming for. So reinforce, reinforce, reinforce is step number 5. So I'd love to hear how you're feeling. I'd love to hear what are your new tools that you're leaning into. I'd love to hear how you are implementing these new foundational beliefs, whether it's on your phone or on sticky notes in some other creative way. I'd love to hear from you guys. And of course, as always, sometimes we need a little extra one-on-one support to really start uncovering some of these patterns, learning more about ourselves, and having some accountability in reinforcing these new ways of thinking. So I'm here to support you in that through one-on-one work. All of that info is down in the notes. You can apply. You can also book a one-time call with me. And then if long-term coaching is the option that you want from there, absolutely, you can go ahead and take it. But keep up the amazing work. Please let me know if there's anything specific that you ever want me to dive into. I'm more than happy to do that. I'm more than happy to do topics specific to what you guys want to hear. But I'm so proud of you for doing this work. Keep it up, and I'll see you guys next Sunday, 6 p.m. PST. New videos, new mindset teachings every single Sunday, 6 p.m. PST. All right, see you there.